Welcome to the part 2 of Crime and Punishment, written by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Let's begin. Raskolnikov had signed an IOU, which is a document that acknowledges the existence of a debt. He had signed an IOU for 115 rubles, which Raskolnikov had given to his landlady, Praskovia Pavlovna, 9 months ago, and on moving into his garret initially, and after subsequently getting to know his landlady on a level beyond usual formalities. Based on tenant to landlady, Raskolnikov had promised to marry his landlady's daughter, but presently, after observing that Raskolnikov was no longer a student, was no longer tutoring to fend for himself anymore, and to add to it, the landlady's daughter, whom Raskolnikov had promised to marry, had died of typhus about a year ago. Praskovia Pavlovna then felt she had no need to treat Raskolnikov as a relation anymore, and as Raskolnikov had become very self-absorbed lately, keeping to himself and thereby no longer relating to her, Praskovia Pavlovna planned to get rid of Raskolnikov. Praskovia Pavlovna then gave the IOU, which Raskolnikov had signed and given to her 9 months ago, to a businessman, Mr. Chebarov. This businessman then initiated the formal demand for the payment of the debt, to which was then communicated to Raskolnikov by the means of a notice from the police office. So the following day, after Raskolnikov had robbed and murdered the old pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna, and her sister, Lizaveta Ivanovna, Raskolnikov was then informed by the porter of the building, where his garret was located, whom was accompanied by Nastasia, the cook and only servant, that he had been summoned to appear that day at the office of the district superintendent. The porter was the one whom Raskolnikov had stolen and returned his axe to commit the crime. I had explained that in my previous video, the part 1 of this series. At the district police station, Raskolnikov was informed by the head clerk, Zametov Alexander Grigorievich, that he must either pay the money owed with all expenses, costs, and so on, or give a written declaration when he can pay, and at the same time, an undertaking not to leave the capital without payment, and nor to sell or conceal his property. The creditor, Raskolnikov's landlady, Praskovia Pavlovna, was at liberty to sell his property and proceed against Raskolnikov according to the law. Raskolnikov then wrote the declaration that he could not pay, that he undertook to do so at a future date, that he would not leave the town, not sell his property, and so on. While on his way out of the district police station, Raskolnikov overheard the superintendent of the district, Nikodim Fomich, and the assistant superintendent of the district, Ilya Petrovich, discussing about the circumstances which led to the discovery of the dead bodies of the old pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna, and her sister Elizaveta Ivanovna. These developments greatly caused Raskolnikov to feel uneasy as he continued to walk towards the exit, the door, but he did not reach it. He lost consciousness, fainted. Raskolnikov had been ill. He had fever, which had begun during his sleep after he had arrived back at his lodge from the home of Alyona Ivanovna, the old pawnbroker, the previous day. This occurrence of Raskolnikov's fainting caused some sort of suspicion towards him in the minds of the head clerk, Zametov Alexander Grigorievich, the assistant superintendent, Ilya Petrovich, and the superintendent of the district, Nikodim Fomich. For Raskolnikov seemed normal, composed, up until the discussion of the old pawnbroker's mother, Alyona Ivanovna, was brought up. After regaining consciousness, Raskolnikov was then questioned by Nikodim Fomich, the superintendent of the district, about if he was ill, when did he become ill, whether he had gone out the day before, at what time did he go out, and where did he go. To which Raskolnikov answered that he had been ill since the day before. He did go out that day, although he was ill. He went out at about 7 and he went along the street. Raskolnikov was then let go to go and treat himself, although the superintendent of the district, Nikodim Fomich, considered detaining Raskolnikov and questioning him some more. Raskolnikov then went out, but he caught the sound of eager conversation on his departure, and above the rest rose the questioning voice of Nikodim Fomich in the street. Raskolnikov's faintness passed off completely. A search. There will be a search at once, Raskolnikov repeated to himself, hurrying to his garret. The brutes, they suspect. Raskolnikov's former terror mastered him completely again. Raskolnikov arrived at his lodge from the district police station. He then filled his pockets with the items he had stolen from the old pawnbroker's home, Alyona Ivanovna. There were 8 articles in all, 2 little boxes with earrings, then 4 small leather cases, a chain which was merely wrapped in newspaper, something else like a decoration which was also wrapped in newspaper, and a purse. Raskolnikov then left the premises of his lodge to the street, wandering about for a prospective place to dispose of the stolen items he had on him. And so, coming out of the V prospect towards the square, Raskolnikov saw on the left a passage leading between 2 blank walls to a courtyard. On the right hand, the blank, unwhitewashed wall of a 4-storied house stretched far into the court. On the left, a wooden hoarding ran parallel with it for 20 paces into the court, and then Raskolnikov turned sharply to the left. At the left, there was a deserted fenced-off place where rubbish of different sorts was lying. At the end of the court, the corner of a low smutty stone shed, apparently part of some workshop, peeped from behind the hoarding. The whole place from the entrance was black with coal dust. Not seeing anyone in the yard, Raskolnikov slipped in, looked around with his hand already in his pocket. He noticed against the outer wall, between the entrance and the sink, a big unhewn stone weighing perhaps 60 pounds. The other side of the wall was the street. Raskolnikov bent down over the stone, seized the top of it firmly in both hands, and using all his strength, turned it over. Under the stone was a small hollow in the ground, and he immediately emptied his pocket into it. The purse laid at the top, and yet the hollow was not filled up. Then Raskolnikov seized the stone again, and with one twist turned it back so that it was in the same position again, though it stood a very little higher. But he scraped the earth about it and pressed it at the edges with his foot. Nothing could be noticed. Then Raskolnikov went out and turned into the square. I have buried my tracks. And who can think of looking under that stone? It has been lying there most likely ever since the house was built, and will lie as many years more. And if it were found, who would think of me? It is all over, no clue. And then Raskolnikov laughed. Suddenly Raskolnikov stopped. A new, utterly unexpected and exceedingly simple question perplexed and bitterly confounded him. If it all has really been done deliberately and not idiotically, if I really had a certain and definite object, how is it I did not even glance into the purse and don't know what I had there, for which I have undergone these agonies and have deliberately undertaken this base, filthy, degrading business? It is because I am very ill, Raskolnikov decided grimly at last. I have been worrying and fretting myself, and I don't know what I am doing. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, and all this time I have been worrying myself. I shall get well, and I shall not worry. But what if I don't get well at all? Good God, how sick I am of it all. Raskolnikov walked on without resting. He had a terrible longing for some distraction, but he did not know what to do, what to attempt. A new overwhelming sensation was gaining more and more mastery over him every moment. This was an immeasurable, almost physical repulsion for everything surrounding him, an obstinate, malignant feeling of hatred. All who met him were loathsome to him. He loathed their faces, their movements, their gestures. If anyone had addressed him, he felt that he might have spat at him or beaten him. Raskolnikov stopped suddenly and coming out on the bank of the Little Neva near the bridge to Vasilievsky Ostrov. Why he lives here, in that house, Raskolnikov thought. Why I have not come to Razumihin of my own accord. Yeah, it's the same thing over again. Very interesting to know, though. Have I come on purpose? Or have I simply walked here by chance? Raskolnikov then went up to Razumihin's room on the 5th floor. Razumihin was one of Raskolnikov's old comrades at the university. He is an exceptionally good-humored and candid youth, extremely intelligent, tall, thin, black-haired, and always badly shaved. He was sometimes uproarious and was reputed to be of great physical strength. There was no limit to his drinking powers, but he could abstain from drink altogether. He sometimes went too far in his pranks, but he could do without pranks altogether. No failure distressed him. He was very poor and kept to himself entirely on what he could earn by work of one sort or another. For the present, he too had been obliged to give up the university, like Raskolnikov, but it was only for a time, and he was working with all his might to save enough to return to his studies again. Raskolnikov had not been to see Razumihin for the last 4 months, and Razumihin did not even know Raskolnikov's address. About 2 months before, they had met in the street, but Raskolnikov had turned away and even crossed to the other side that he might not be observed. And though Razumihin noticed Raskolnikov, Razumihin passed Raskolnikov by, as Razumihin did not want to annoy Raskolnikov. Razumihin was at home in his garret, busily writing at the moment, and he opened the door himself. Razumihin was sitting in a ragged dressing gown, with slippers on his bare feet, unkempt, unshaven, and unwashed. His face showed surprise. "Is it you?" Razumihin cried. He looked his comrade up and down. Then after a brief pause, he whistled, "As hard up as all that. Why, brother? You have caught me out," he added, looking at Raskolnikov's rags. "Come, sit down. You are tired. I will be bound." And when Raskolnikov had sunk down on the American leather sofa, which was in even worse condition than his own, Razumihin saw at once that his visitor was ill. "Why? You are seriously ill. Do you know that?" Razumihin began feeling Raskolnikov's pulse. Raskolnikov pulled away his hands. "Never mind," Raskolnikov said. "I have come for this. I have no lessons. I wanted, but I don't really want lessons." "But I say, you are delirious, Razumihin observed, watching Raskolnikov carefully. "No, I am not." Raskolnikov got up from the sofa as he had mounted the stairs to Razumihin. He had not realized that he would be meeting his friend face to face. Now, in a flash, he knew that what he was, least of all, deposed for at that moment was to be face to face with anyone in the wide world. His spleen rose within him. He almost choked with rage at himself as soon as he crossed Razumihin's threshold. "Goodbye," Raskolnikov said abruptly, and walked to the door. "Stop, stop, you queer fish." "I don't want to," said the other, again pulling away his hand. "Then why the devil have you come? Are you mad or what? Why? This is almost insulting." "I won't let you go like that." "Well then, I came to you because I know no one but you who could help. To begin, because you are kinder than anyone, cleverer, I mean, and can judge. And now I see that I want nothing. Do you hear? Nothing at all. No one's services, no one's sympathy. I am by myself, alone. Come, that's enough. Leave me alone." "Stay a minute, you sweep. You are a perfect madman. As you like for all I care. I have no lessons, do you see? And I don't care about that. But there's a bookseller, Heru Vimov, and he takes the place of a lesson. I would not exchange him for 5 lessons. He's doing publishing of a kind and issuing natural science manuals. And what is circulation they have? The very titles are worth the money. You always maintain that I was a fool. But by Jove, my boy, there are, there are greater fools than I am. Now he's setting up for being advanced. Not that he has an inkling of anything, but of course, I encourage him. Here are 2 signatures of the German text. In my opinion, the crudest charlatanism. It discusses the question, is woman a human being? And of course, triumphantly proves that she is. Heruvimov is going to bring out this work as a contribution to the woman question. I am translating it. He will expand these 2.5 signatures into 6. We shall make up a gorgeous title, half a page long, and bring it out at half a ruble. It will do. He pays me 6 rubles, the signature. It will work out to about 15 rubles for the job, and I have had 6 already in advance. When we have finished this, we are going to begin a translation about Wales, and then some of the dullest scandals out of the second part of Les Confessions. We have marked for translation. Somebody has told Heruvimov that Rousseau was a kind of radish chef. You may be sure I don't contradict him. Hang him. Well, would you like to do the second signature of "Is a woman a human being"? If you would, take the German and pens and paper. All those are provided. And take 3 rubles for, as I have had 6 rubles in advance on the whole thing. 3 rubles come to you for your share. And when you have finished the signature, there will be another 3 rupees for you. And please don't think I am doing you a service. Quite the contrary. As soon as you came in, I saw how you could help me to begin with. I am weak in spelling. And secondly, I am sometimes utterly adrift in German. So that I make it up as I go along for the most part. The only comfort is that it's bound to be a change for the better. Though, who can tell? Maybe sometimes for the worse. Will you take it? Raskolnikov took the German sheets in silence. took the 3 rubles, and without a word went out. Razumihin gazed after Raskolnikov in astonishment. But when Raskolnikov was in the next street, he turned back, mounted the stairs to Razumihin's again, and laying on the table the German article and the 3 rubles, went out again, still without uttering a word. "Are you raving or what?" Razumihin shouted, roused to fury at last. "What farce is this? You drive me crazy too. What did you come to see me for? Damn you!" "I don't want translation," muttered Raskolnikov from the stairs. "Then what the devil do you want?" shouted Razumihin from above. Raskolnikov continued descending the staircase in silence. "Hey there, where are you living?" There was no answer from Raskolnikov. "Well, confound you then." But Raskolnikov was already stepping into the street aimlessly, where he then continued to ruminate, wandering again until he eventually reached his home in the evening, so that he must have been walking for about 6 hours, undressing and quivering like an overdriven horse. Raskolnikov then laid down on the sofa in his room, drew his great coat over himself, and at once sank into oblivion. Raskolnikov returned to full consciousness 4 days after. It happened at 10 o'clock in the morning. Nastasia Petrovna, the servant, Razumihin, Raskolnikov's friend and fellow student, and a messenger from the merchant, Shelupahev, whom had come to deliver 30 rubles sent by Afanasy Ivanovich Varushin, a merchant of the province of Aro, at the request of Raskolnikov's mother, Pulcheria Raskolnikov, were present at Raskolnikov's room with him. Razumihin then revealed the length at which he went to find out where Raskolnikov lived, which was initially out of a motivation to get back at Raskolnikov. But after finding out about the IOU incident between Raskolnikov and his landlady, Praskovia Pavlovna, and then making acquaintance with the head clerk at the police station, Zametov, who then explained the incident of Raskolnikov fainting earlier that day before Raskolnikov had come to his home. Razumihin then had a change of heart towards his friend. His friend's absurd behavior towards him. He then made his way towards Raskolnikov's garret after making further inquiries, towards which he then found Raskolnikov gravely ill, and then invited the doctor, Zuzimov, to treat Raskolnikov during the 4 days of Raskolnikov being unconscious. Razumihin then made the acquaintance of Praskovia Pavlovna, Raskolnikov's landlady, whom Razumihin then managed to convince to trust that Raskolnikov would pay his debt without her needing to use the IOU. And after Razumihin then contacted Mr. Chebarov, the businessman who had initiated the formal demand for the payment of the debt, and then paid this businessman 10 rubles in exchange for the IOU document, to which Razumihin then tore into pieces and presented it to Raskolnikov. Razumihin then let Raskolnikov rest and then came by later in the day. They were joined shortly after by Zozimov, the doctor, who began to discuss with Razumihin about the case of the murdered old pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna. Then suddenly, during the course of their conversation, they were interrupted by the presence of Pyotr Petrovich Luzin, the fiancé and husband-to-be of Raskolnikov's sister, Dunya, whom had come to introduce himself to Raskolnikov and also reveal that he had found a temporal lodging for Raskolnikov's mother and sister and was expecting them to arrive at Petersburg soon. Pyotr Petrovich Luzin, while interacting with Raskolnikov and his visitors, also took an interest towards the topic of the old pawnbroker, to which Razumihin revealed that all of the old pawnbroker's customers who had left pledges with her were being called forward to be examined, as the murderer could possibly be one of Alyona Ivanovna's customers. Raskolnikov received this information in visible alarm and then went on to quarrel with Pyotr Petrovich Luzin, whose presence greatly irritated him. And with this occurrence, Raskolnikov then sent everyone present in his room away, as he wanted to be alone. Raskolnikov then left his lodge and then made his way to the Palais de Cristal, a restaurant, where he then proceeded to order for and read all the newspapers that had been published during the 4 days he was unconscious, searching for news about the murder of the old pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna. But before taking his seat at the restaurant, Raskolnikov saw 2 or 3 people drinking tea, and in a room further away, there were 4 men drinking champagne, and amongst them was the head clerk at the police station, Zametov. Presently, Raskolnikov's hand shook with nervous impatience as he turned the sheets of the newspaper. Suddenly, someone sat down beside him at his table. Raskolnikov looked up. It was the head clerk, Zametov, looking just the same, with the rings on his fingers and the watch chain, with the curly black hair parted and pomaded, with his smart waistcoat, rather shabby coat, and doubtful linen. Zametov was in a good humor. At least he was smiling, very gaily and good-humoredly. His dark face was rather flushed from the champagne he had drunk. What? You here? Zametov began in surprise, speaking as though he had known Raskolnikov all his life. Why? Razumihin told me only yesterday you were unconscious. How strange. Raskolnikov knew Zametov would come up to him. Raskolnikov laid aside the papers and turned to Zametov. There was a smile on Raskolnikov's lips, and a new shade of irritable impatience was apparent in that smile. You must have a jolly life, Mr. Zametov. Entrance free to the most agreeable places. Who's been pouring champagne into you just now? We have just been having a drink together. You talk about pouring it into me. By way of a fee, you profit by everything. Raskolnikov laughed. It's all right, my dear boy, Raskolnikov added, slapping Zametov on the shoulder. I'm not speaking from temper, but in a friendly way, for sport. How strange you are. I'm sure you are still very unwell. You oughtn't to have come out, Zametov replied. Oh, do I seem strange to you? Yes. What are you doing? Reading the papers? Yes, Raskolnikov replied. There's a lot about the fires. No, I'm not reading about the fires, but confess now, my dear fellow, you are awfully anxious to know what I'm reading about. I am not in the least. May not I ask a question? What do you keep on? Shall I tell you what I was reading about? What I was looking for? See what a lot of papers have made them bring me. Suspicious, eh? Well, what is it? I declare to you, no better. I confess. No, that's not right either. I make a deposition and you take it. I deposed that I was reading, that I was looking and searching, and came here on purpose to do it, for news of the murder of the old pawnbroker woman. Silence followed for exactly a minute, and Zametov and Raskolnikov gazed at one another for a while. What if you have been reading about it? Zametov cried at last, perplexed and impatient. That's no business of mine. What of it? The same old woman, Raskolnikov, went on, whispering, not heeding Zametov's explanation. About whom you were talking in the police office. You remember when I fainted? Well, do you understand now? What do you mean, understand? What? Zametov brought out, almost alarmed. You are either mad or, began Zametov, and he broke off as though stunned by the idea that had suddenly flashed into his mind. Or? Or what? What? Come, tell me. No, nothing, said Zametov, getting angry. It's all nonsense. Why don't you drink your tea? It's getting cold, said Zametov. What? Tea? Oh, yes. Raskolnikov sipped the glass, put a morsel of bread in his mouth, and suddenly looking at Zametov seemed to remember everything and pulled himself together. There have been a great many of these crimes lately, said Zametov. Only the other day I read in the Moscow news that a whole gang of false coiners had been caught in Moscow. It was a regular society, then used to forge tickets. Oh, but it was a long time ago. I read about it a month ago. Raskolnikov answered calmly. So you consider them criminals? Raskolnikov added, smiling. Of course, they are criminals. But all that is only talk. That old woman murdered in our district. The murderer seems to have been a desperate fellow. He risked everything in open daylight, was saved by a miracle, but his hands shook too. He did not succeed in robbing the place. He couldn't stand it. That was clear from the Raskolnikov seemed offended. Clear? Why don't you catch him then? Raskolnikov cried maliciously, jibing at Zametov. Well, they will catch him. Who? You? Do you suppose you could catch him? You have a tough job. A man will commit a clever murder at the risk of his life, and then at once he goes drinking in a tavern. They are caught spending money. I believe that even a practiced desperate man cannot always reckon on himself, much less you and I. We wouldn't go to a tavern, of course. Raskolnikov frowned and looked steadily at Zametov. You seem to enjoy the subject and would like to know how I should behave in that case. Raskolnikov asked with pleasure. With displeasure. I should like to, Zametov answered firmly and seriously. Somewhat too much earnestness. Earnestness. began to appear in his words and looks. Very much, very much. Alright then, this is how I should behave, Raskolnikov began, bringing his face close to Zametov's, staring at him and speaking in a whisper, so that the latter positively shuddered. This is what I should have done. I should have taken the money and jewels. I should have walked out of there and have gone straight to some deserted place with fences round it, and scarcely anyone to be seen. Some kitchen garden or place of that sort. I should have looked out beforehand, some stone weighing 100 weight or more, which had been lying in the corner from the time the house was built. I would lift that stone there. There would be sure to be a hollow under it, and I will put the jewels and money in that hole. Then I will roll the stone back so that it would look as before. I would press it down with my foot and walk away. And for a year or two, three maybe, I would not touch it. And well, they could search. There would be no trace. You are a madman, said Zametov, also in a whisper, and then moved away from Raskolnikov, whose eyes were glittering. And what if it was I who murdered the old woman and Lizaveta? Raskolnikov said suddenly, and realized what he had done. Zametov looked widely at Raskolnikov and turned white as a tablecloth. His face wore a contorted smile. But is it possible? Zametov brought out faintly. Raskolnikov looked wrathfully at Zametov. Own up that you believed it. Yes, you did. Not a bit of it. I believed it less than ever now, Zametov cried hastily. I have caught my cock sparrow. So you did believe it before. If now you believe less than ever. Not at all, cried Zametov, obviously embarrassed. Have you been frightening me so as to lead up to this? You don't believe it then. What were you talking about behind my back when I went out of the police office? And why did the explosive lieutenant question me after I fainted? Hey there, Raskolnikov shouted to the waiter, getting up and taking his cap. How much? 30 kopecks, the latter replied, running up. And there is 20 kopecks for vodka. See what? A lot of money. Raskolnikov held out his shaking hand to Zametov with notes in it, red notes and blue. 25 rubles. Where did I get them? And where did my new clothes come from? You know, I had not a kopeck. You have crossed examined my landlady. I will be bound. Well, that's enough. Azes course. Till we meet again. Raskolnikov then went out, trembling all over from a sort of wild hysterical sensation in which there was an element of insufferable rapture. Obviously, the 25 rubles was from the 35 rubles that his mother, Pulchera Raskolnikov, had sent to him through the merchant Afanasy Ivanovich Varushin of the province of Aro, which is the province that Raskolnikov's mother resides in. Raskolnikov had paid 10 rubles to reimburse Razumin for the for the money Razumin had paid to Mr. Chebarov. The businessman who was in the possession of the IOU Raskolnikov had signed and given to his landlady, Praskovia Pavlovna. And Razumin also was the one that provided the new clothes that Raskolnikov was wearing. So that also is the explanation of that complexity. Zametov, left alone, sat for a long time in the same place, plunged in thought. Raskolnikov had unwittingly worked a revolution in Zametov's brain on a certain point and had made up Zametov's mind for him conclusively. Raskolnikov had hardly opened the door of the restaurant when he stumbled against Razumihin on the steps. They did not see each other till they almost knocked against each other. For a moment, they stood looking each other up and down. Razumihin was greatly astounded. Then anger, real anger, gleamed fiercely in his eyes. So, here you are, Razumihin shouted at the top of his voice. You ran away from your bed, and here I have been looking for you under the sofa. We went up to the garret. I almost beat Nastasia on your account, and here he is after all. Rodia. Rodia is also Raskolnikov's name. Raskolnikov is the name of his father, his son name. So that's why everybody calls him like that. But he also goes by Rodia. What is the meaning of it? Tell me the whole truth. Confess. Do you hear? It means that I am sick to death of you all, and I want to be alone, Raskolnikov answered calmly. Alone? When you are not able to walk, when your face is as white as a sheet, and you are gasping for breath. Idiot. What have you been doing in the Palais de Cristal? Own up at once. Let me go, said Raskolnikov, and tried to pass Razumin. This was too much for Razumin. He gripped Raskolnikov firmly by the shoulder. Let you go? You dare tell me to let you go? Do you know what I will do with you directly? I'll pick you up, tie you up in a bundle, carry you home under my arm, and lock you up. Listen, Razumihin, Raskolnikov began quietly, apparently calm. Can't you see that I don't want your benevolence? A strange desire you have to shower benefits on a man who causes them, who feels them a burden. In fact, why did you seek me out at the beginning of my illness? Maybe I was very glad to die. Didn't I tell you plainly enough today that you were torturing me? That I was sick of you? You seem to want to torture people. I assure you that all that is seriously hindering my recovery because it's continually irritating me. You saw Zozimov went away just now to avoid irritating me. You leave me alone too. For goodness sake, what right have you indeed to keep me by force? Don't you see that I am in possession of all my faculties now? How can I persuade you not to persecute me with your kindness? I may be ungrateful, I may be mean. Only let me be, for God's sake. Let me be. Let me be. Let me be. Raskolnikov finished his statement, panting for breath in a frenzy. Razumihin stood a moment, thought, and let his hand drop. Well, go to hell then, Razumihin said gently and thoughtfully. Stay, Razumihin roared as Raskolnikov was about to move. Razumihin then proceeded to invite Raskolnikov to his home as he had just moved to a new place and was throwing a housewarming party to which Raskolnikov declined and left, walking straight to X Bridge. Raskolnikov stood in the middle of the bridge and leaning both elbows on the rail, stared into the distance. Suddenly he started, saved again, perhaps from swooning, by an uncanny and hideous sight. Raskolnikov became aware of someone standing on the right side of him. He looked and saw a tall woman with a kerchief on her head, with a long yellow wasted face and red sunken eyes. She was looking straight at Raskolnikov, but obviously she saw nothing and recognized no one. Suddenly, she leaned her right hand on the parapet, lifted her right leg over the railing, then her left, and threw herself into the canal. The filthy water parted and swallowed up its victim for a moment. But an instant later, the drowning woman floated to the surface, moving slowly with the current, her head and legs in the water, her skirt inflated like a balloon over her back. A woman drowning! A woman drowning! Shouted dozens of voices. People ran up. Both banks were thronged with spectators. On the bridge, people crowded about Raskolnikov, pressing up behind him. Mercy on it! It's our Afrosinia! A woman cried tearfully close by. Mercy, save her, kind people. Pull her out. A boat was shouted in the crowd, but there was no need of a boat. A policeman ran down the steps to the canal, threw off his great coat and his boots, and rushed into the water. It was easy to reach her. She floated within a couple of yards from the steps. He caught hold of her clothes with his right hand and with his left seized the pole which a comrade held out to him. The drowning woman was pulled out at once. They laid her on the granite pavement of the embankment. She soon recovered consciousness, raised her head, sat up, and began sneezing and coughing, stupidly wiping her wet dress with her hands. She said nothing. She's drunk herself, out of her senses. The same woman's voice wailed at her side, out of her senses. The other day she tried to hang herself. We cut her down. I ran out to the shop just now, left my little girl to look after her. And yeah, she's in trouble again. A neighbor, gentleman, a neighbor. We live close by. The second house from the road. See, yonder. The crowd broke up. The police still remained round the woman. Someone mentioned the police station. Raskolnikov looked on with a strange sensation of indifference and apathy. He felt disgusted. He moved from the bridge and walked in the direction of the police office. His heart felt hollow and empty. He did not want to think. Raskolnikov then continued to wander aimlessly again until suddenly someone seemed to whisper in his ear. He lifted his head and saw that he was standing at the very gate at the house of the house. He had not passed it. He had not been near it since that evening. An overwhelming, unaccountable prompting drew Raskolnikov on. He went into the house. He was perplexed to find the door of the flat wide open. There were men there. He could hear voices. He went into the flat. There were workmen in it. There were two workmen, both young fellows, but one much younger than the other. They were papering the walls with a new white paper covered with lilac flowers instead of the old dirty yellow one. Well, what do you want? Who are you? The other workman shouted, going to Raskolnikov. I want to take a flat, Raskolnikov said. I'm looking around. It's not the time to look at rooms at night, and you ought to come up with the porter. The floors have been washed. Will they be painted? Raskolnikov went on. Is there no blood? What blood? Why? The old woman and her sister were murdered here. There was a perfect pool there. But who are you? The workman cried, uneasy. Who am I? Yes. You want to know? Come to the police station. I will tell you. The workmen looked at Raskolnikov in amazement. It's time for us to go. We are late. Come along, Alyoshka. You must lock up, said the elder workman. Very well. Come along, said Raskolnikov, indifferently, and going out first. He went slowly downstairs. Hey, Potter, Raskolnikov cried in the gateway. At the entrance, several people were standing, staring at the passers-by. The two porters, a peasant woman, a man in a long coat, and a few others. Raskolnikov went straight to them. Raskolnikov also acted absurdly towards these people, and at the end was flung into the street, where he then came across an incident at the end of the street, 200 yards away. Marmeladov, a drunkard, a middle-aged man who had made the acquaintance of Raskolnikov in one of Raskolnikov's visits at the tavern, had been crossing the road while drunk and was run over by a carriage. Marmeladov was caught in the wheel and turned round with it for 30 yards on the road and was now gravely injured, close to death. Raskolnikov, recognizing Marmeladov, beckoned for the help of the police around the scene of the incident, and then they carried Marmeladov to his home, where the injured man then died. Raskolnikov then gave Katerina Ivanovna 20 rubles to help her with the burial of Marmeladov, her husband, to which she was positively grateful for. Raskolnikov, then, feeling a temporary renewed sense to life in that moment, had a change of heart and went to see Razumin at the get-together he was throwing for himself, where they then together left for Raskolnikov's garret, where they met Raskolnikov's mother and sister, who had been anxiously waiting for Raskolnikov for about an hour and 30 minutes. But now were positively delighted to reunite with Raskolnikov, whom, then overwhelmed by the shock of seeing his mother and sister, proceeded to lose consciousness. He fainted. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Soren Kierkegaard.